The call came on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon, just as I was setting my coffee mug down and settling into my worn-out desk chair. The number was unfamiliar, flashing urgently across my phone screen. Something in my gut twisted even before I answered. "Hello, is this Emily Carter?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "This is Charles from Liberty National Bank. We're calling regarding your overdue mortgage balance of $523,000. We've sent several notices, but..." The words blurred. Mortgage? $523,000? I didn't own a house. I didn't even own a new car. "You must have the wrong person," I said, my voice shaking despite my efforts to sound calm. "Ma'am, the documents we have show your full name, date of birth, and social security number. You are listed as the primary borrower on the loan taken out 3 years ago." 3 years ago. My heart dropped. That was around the time Jessica, my younger sister, had been talking about wanting a bigger house, one she couldn't afford. I sat frozen, the hum of my computer fan filling the silence. My mind raced, flipping through memories I didn't even know I was storing. Jessica flashing Pinterest boards at family dinners. My parents gushing about how Jessica deserves the best. How we all pitch in for family. But pitch in like this? After hanging up with the bank, promising to look into it when I could barely breathe, I pressed my palms to my eyes hard. My small, one-bedroom apartment around me suddenly felt like it was caving in. There had to be a mistake. There had to be. I rifled through my drawers, pulling out every old document I had, praying I would find some clue that proved it wasn't me. But deep down, the icy grip of betrayal had already begun to wrap around my ribs. Because if it wasn't a mistake, there was only one explanation. I thought about how my parents always called me the responsible one. The one who didn't need help, who wouldn't make a fuss. Meanwhile, Jessica flitted from one bad decision to another, cushioned by Mom's whispered excuses and Dad's tired sighs. It had always been that way. I was the background character in my own family, useful, dependable, invisible. I pressed my forehead against the cool wood of my desk. Tears burned the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about being treated like my future, my life, was something they could casually sign away without even a warning. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from my mother. "Hey, sweetheart. Hope you're having a good week. Family dinner Sunday." Family dinner. Like everything was normal. Like my name wasn't tied to $500,000 of debt I didn't sign for. The taste in my mouth turned bitter. I typed back, sure, and hit send. Because before anything else, before accusations or screaming matches, I needed to know the whole truth. And when I found it, I would decide exactly how loud or how silent my response would be. And something deep inside me promised, this time I wouldn't stay invisible. The next morning, after a sleepless night of staring at the cracks in my ceiling, I sat hunched over the kitchen table, a steaming cup of untouched coffee beside me. My laptop was open, tabs multiplying like weeds, mortgage fraud, forged signatures, legal advice blogs, warning signs of identity theft. But none of it prepared me for what I was about to see. I called the bank again, requesting a copy of the mortgage documents. The woman on the line was polite, almost mechanical, as she emailed them over within minutes. When the PDF opened, my breath caught in my throat. There it was, page after page, filled with my name, my information, and my signature, except it wasn't mine. It looked close enough that someone who didn't know better might not notice. But I knew every curve of my real signature, every little tremble in my hand. This one was too perfect, too rehearsed. It felt like staring into a cracked mirror. I zoomed in, studying the slanted loops, the heavy tail on the Y, and Emily, the way Carter was spelled just a little too neatly. My hands started to tremble. How could they do this? How could my own parents? The floor seemed to shift under me. I grabbed the edge of the table, grounding myself. I kept flipping through the pages, heart pounding harder with every line. Every loan term, every initial scribbled on the margins, every signature. It was like watching someone rob me in slow motion. And the worst part was, they hadn't even thought I deserved to be warned. I thought about every family holiday where Jessica was treated like royalty and I was expected to smile and clap from the sidelines. Every time I picked up the check because, "You're doing better right now, sweetheart." Doing better until now. The walls of my small kitchen seemed to close in tighter. I closed my eyes, letting the storm churn inside me. No tears. Not yet. Only a growing, hollow ache. The betrayal wasn't loud. It didn't come with screaming or slammed doors. It was quiet, sharp, like a scalpel sliding under the skin. I started gathering every scrap of paper that tied me to them financially. Old bank statements, credit reports, even birthday cards where they joked about the responsible daughter. Evidence. I didn't know exactly what I would do with it yet, but I knew I needed to protect myself. As the hours crawled by, memories flashed behind my eyes like a cruel movie reel. Jessica showing off her new car after flunking out of college. Mom telling me, "You're the strong one, Emmy. Jess needs a little extra." Dad patting my head like a dog when I graduated without anyone showing up to the ceremony. They had always expected me to carry the weight, to be the net when Jessica fell. This time, they hadn't even bothered to ask. They just signed my future away, assuming I would never fight back. By evening, a neat pile of documents sat on the kitchen table, a silent promise to myself. The girl who once bent over backwards to be the good daughter was gone. Now, I wasn't sure exactly who I was becoming, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't stay silent forever. Sunday came too fast. I stood in front of my parents' house, the house where I grew up, staring at the door like it was the entrance to a courtroom. A part of me wanted to turn around, to pretend none of this had happened, to stay the invisible daughter who didn't cause trouble. But another part, the part they didn't know they'd created, steeled my spine. I knocked once, twice. The door swung open, and there was my mother, beaming like everything was perfect. "Emmy, so glad you could make it, sweetheart." "Sweetheart." I stepped inside. The familiar smell of pot roast and lemon cleaner hit me all at once, dragging me back to 100 childhood memories. Only now they felt hollow. Dad was in the living room, half watching a football game, beer balanced on the armrest. Jessica sat curled up on the couch, scrolling on her phone, expensive purse tossed carelessly beside her. None of them even glanced at me properly. I took a seat quietly, my heart pounding so loud it felt like the walls should shake. I waited, let them get comfortable, let them reveal themselves. Dinner was served like any other Sunday. Laughter, chatter, Jessica complaining about how expensive landscaping was for her stupid big yard. Dad grunting about the game. Mom doting on Jessica like she hung the moon. Finally, after the plates were cleared, I spoke. "Hey, I have a question," I said, my voice low but steady. 3 sets of eyes turned toward me, mildly curious, like I was about to ask if they'd seen my missing scarf. "Does anyone know anything about a mortgage with my name on it?" Silence. A full, thick silence that made the ticking of the wall clock deafening. Jessica was the first to react. She shifted, pulling her sleeves down nervously. Mom's smile faltered. Dad coughed into his hand. I kept my expression calm, almost blank. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just waited. Mom was the first to break. "Honey, listen," she started, reaching across the table like we were discussing the weather. "It's not a big deal. It's family. Jessica just needed a little help qualifying for her loan. That's all. It's not like you're actually paying anything." "Not a big deal." Jessica chimed in, voice defensive. "You have good credit, Em." "I don't. It's not fair that you wouldn't help. It's just paperwork." Just paperwork. I leaned back in my chair, letting the words settle around me like ash. They didn't even think it was wrong. They had convinced themselves it was normal, that I was the bad guy for being upset. I nodded slowly, keeping my face carefully neutral. "Thanks for explaining," I said quietly. Jessica shrugged, already reaching for her phone again, as if the matter was closed. Mom beamed like she had soothed a silly little tantrum. Dad turned back to the game. None of them saw the storm brewing behind my calm eyes. They thought the old Emily was still sitting there. They didn't realize yet that the real storm would hit when they least expected it, and it would be silent until it wasn't. The drive home was a blur. Streetlights streaked across the windshield, but I barely saw them. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The faint hum of the tires on the pavement, the only sound in the car. Inside, though, it was anything but quiet. Their words spun around in my head like a cruel carousel. It's just paperwork. It's not a big deal. Family helps family. I thought about every sacrifice I had made. Every time I swallowed disappointment to keep the peace. Every time I picked up Jessica's mess behind the scenes. And for what? So they could handcuff me to a $523,000 debt without even a phone call? I pulled into my driveway and sat there, staring at the darkened outline of my small house. For a long time, I didn't move. I let the betrayal settle deeper into my bones, burning a hole I knew would never fully heal. But I also realized something else. This was the moment they had finally freed me, not by choice, not by apology, but by stripping away every last illusion I had clung to about who they were, about what family meant. There was nothing left to protect anymore. No love to cling to, hoping it would fix itself. They had drawn the line. Now I would decide what side I stood on. I went inside, changed into my oldest sweatshirt, and opened my laptop again. This time I didn't search for advice. I searched for answers. Solutions. Lawyers who specialized in mortgage fraud. Articles about suing family members. Steps to remove your name from a fraudulent loan. The world felt colder, sharper. But for the first time in a long time, I felt awake. I stayed up late into the night, reading, taking notes, mapping out everything. If they had expected me to roll over and cry about it, they didn't know me at all. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to throw fits or demand apologies that would never come. I was going to be smarter, quieter, deadlier. I thought about every moment they had made me feel small. Mom brushing off my college acceptance with a distracted, "That's nice, honey." Dad laughing when I told him about the promotion I earned without anyone's help, Jessica sneering, "Not everyone's perfect like you." I wasn't perfect. I had just been surviving, carrying the weight they tossed aside without a second thought. And now I would carry my own weight, and I would watch them crumble under the one they tried to pin on me. As the clock struck 2 a.m., I closed the laptop and sat back, exhaustion washing over me. But it wasn't the hopeless exhaustion I'd felt before. This time, it was the heavy calm of someone who had made a decision. I would free myself. I would protect my future. And when they realized what I had done, it would already be too late. Some lessons cost nothing. Some lessons cost everything. They were about to learn the difference. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. It was strange how betrayal, once fully realized, could sharpen the mind instead of breaking it. I called out of work, telling my boss I needed a personal day. She didn't ask questions. I think she heard something different in my voice, a quiet finality that didn't invite small talk. My first stop was a local coffee shop not far from downtown. It was quiet, tucked between a florist and a bookstore. The kind of place where secrets could be discussed without anyone caring enough to listen. I sat at a corner table, nursing a bitter black coffee, waiting for my appointment. At exactly 9 a.m., he arrived. Mr. Warner, a real estate attorney recommended by a friend, someone known for being discreet and ruthless when necessary. He was older, sharp-eyed, with the no-nonsense energy of someone who had seen too many ugly family battles to be fazed by one more. I handed him the documents I had gathered, the mortgage papers with my name plastered across them, the letters from the bank demanding payments, my credit report showing the hit my score had taken. Mr. Warner flipped through the stack methodically, eyebrows drawing together slightly. When he finished, he set the papers down and looked at me steadily. "You understand what this means, right?" he asked. I nodded. They committed fraud. Identity theft, technically. It's criminal. Hearing those words out loud felt like a punch and a bomb all at once. Fraud. Identity theft. Not just family drama. Not just a misunderstanding. Crimes. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just leaned in and asked the only question that mattered. How do I fix it? Over the next 2 hours, Mr. Warner laid out the plan. File a police report. Notify the bank in writing, officially disputing the loan. Begin proceedings to have my name legally removed. Sue, if necessary, for damages. It wouldn't be fast. It wouldn't be easy. And it would absolutely destroy whatever fragile ties remained with my family. but it would also save my future. As I listened, taking notes carefully, I realized something important. I wasn't doing this to them. I was doing this for me. They had made their choices. I was just choosing differently now. When the meeting ended, Mr. Warner shook my hand firmly. "You're doing the right thing, Emily," he said. "Don't let guilt make you weak." I tucked his card into my wallet and left the cafe, stepping into the bright, unforgiving sunlight. Outside, life moved on. People laughed, cars honked, a mother scolded her child lovingly on the sidewalk. I realized, standing there, that my life could move on too. Without them. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be mine. And for the first time, that was enough. The police station smelled faintly of old coffee and something metallic, like worn-out filing cabinets. I stood at the counter, feeling oddly detached as I explained to the officer that I needed to file a report for identity theft. When he asked for the details, I handed over the thick file Mr. Warner had helped me compile: documents, timelines, copies of my ID, the fraudulent loan papers. As the officer flipped through them, I caught a flicker of something across his face. Recognition, disbelief, maybe even a small flash of anger on my behalf. "You sure you want to move forward with this?" he asked quietly, glancing up at me. "If I don't," I said evenly, "they'll keep taking from me." He nodded, stamped the papers, and handed me a copy of the report. It was official now. From there, the dominoes began to fall faster than I had even dared hope. I mailed the certified letter to the bank that same afternoon, attaching the police report and a formal dispute notice. I remember standing at the post office counter, the pen trembling slightly in my hand as I signed the last form. Not from fear, from the weight of finality. There would be no taking this back. The next few days passed in a tense, eerie silence. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call Jessica. I didn't warn them. Instead, I waited. 3 days later, my mother showed up unannounced at my doorstep. I watched her from the window before opening the door. She looked disheveled, furious, and beneath it all, terrified. When I finally opened it, I didn't invite her inside. She launched into it without even a greeting. "How dare you involve the police? Do you know what you've done to this family?" I listened quietly, letting her words bounce off me like rubber bullets. "I trusted you to be understanding," she hissed. "Jessica needed help. Family sticks together." I tilted my head slightly, studying her. "No," I said softly. "Family asks. They don't steal." Her face reddened, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "You've ruined everything," she cried. I almost laughed, but I didn't. Instead, I kept my voice level, my words like knives wrapped in velvet. "I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped cleaning up your messes." And then, without another word, I closed the door. It was the most powerful sound I had ever made, that soft click as the latch caught. I stood there on the other side, heart pounding, but not from regret. From release. Later that night, Jessica tried calling me. 12 missed calls. A string of desperate, angry voicemails. I deleted them without listening. The bank responded within a week. They suspended the loan, pending investigation, and issued a formal apology for their role in the ordeal. The legal process would still drag on for months, but I had taken the first steps. The right steps. And my family? Their world, built on lies and entitlement, was finally starting to crack. I didn't have to scream. I didn't have to fight. All I had to do was stand still while the truth did its work. And somehow that was so much sweeter. In the weeks that followed, the silence grew thick around me. No more surprise visits. No more frantic calls. No more guilt-drenched texts from relatives telling me to just forgive and forget. It was as if I had been erased from the family group chat, from holiday plans, from their carefully curated image of unity. At first, the loneliness was suffocating. Even when the betrayal cuts deep, there's a part of you, the child still craving approval, that aches when the ties finally snap. But slowly, something else took root inside me. Peace. Real peace. I found myself doing things I had neglected for years. I spent Saturdays wandering through farmers markets, buying sunflowers for my kitchen table. I started hiking local trails, breathing in the cool morning air and feeling the earth steady beneath my feet. I enrolled in a pottery class on a whim, my hands clumsy, but my spirit somehow lighter each time I shaped something new from the raw clay. There was something beautiful about rebuilding. Not loudly, not for show, but quietly, piece by fragile piece. The legal process continued in the background. I responded to emails from Mr. Warner, signed affidavits, collected updates about the loan's slow unwinding. Each time I saw an official letter with my name on it, Emily Parker, it reminded me, this name is mine. This life is mine. Not a gift from my parents. Not an obligation to my sister. Mine. The strangest part was realizing that, deep down, I didn't want revenge the way I once thought I would. I didn't want to see Jessica lose everything. I didn't want my parents dragged through public shame. I just wanted distance. Freedom. A chance to live without carrying the invisible weight of debts I never agreed to bear. One evening, a few months after it all began, I sat on my small apartment balcony with a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker to life. I thought about the girl I had been, the one who kept saying yes out of fear, who kept absorbing every blow like it was her duty. And I thought about the woman I was becoming, quiet, steady, unbreakable in a way no shouting match could ever achieve. A soft breeze lifted the edge of the old throw blanket wrapped around my shoulders. I smiled into the darkness and whispered the words I had waited a lifetime to believe. I owe them nothing. Not anger, not explanations, not even forgiveness on their timeline. Just silence. And in that silence, I finally found myself. The final confrontation wasn't loud. It wasn't a screaming match or a tearful apology. It wasn't anything dramatic at all. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon, almost a year after everything had started. I had just come back from a pottery fair, arms full of handmade mugs and bowls, when I saw them, my parents and Jessica, standing awkwardly outside my apartment building. They looked smaller somehow. Jessica's once perfect hair was unkempt, her eyes darting around nervously. My mother clutched her purse so tightly that her knuckles were white. And my father, the man who once bellowed that family was about loyalty, couldn't even meet my gaze. They were losing everything. The bank's investigation had triggered a cascade of consequences. Jessica's loan had defaulted. The house she was so proud of was foreclosed. And with it, their carefully built illusion of control crumbled. I paused on the sidewalk, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows around us. They must have seen the change in me, because for the first time in my life, they didn't bark orders or demand explanations. They pleaded. "Emily," my mother began, voice trembling. "We made a mistake, but we're still family." Jessica stepped forward, her voice thin and desperate. "I need your help, just for a little while. Please don't turn your back on us." There was no anger inside me anymore. No burning need to lash out or make them suffer. Just a deep, calm certainty. I set down my bags slowly and stood up straight. I looked at each of them, really looked, at their faces full of fear, regret, and the realization that I no longer belonged to them. They hadn't come because they loved me. They had come because they needed something from me again. And this time, there would be nothing to take. "I hope," I said, my voice steady and clear, "that one day you understand what real family means. But it's not something you can steal, or fake, or demand when it's convenient." I picked up my bags again, feeling the weight of them, solid and real in my hands. "And as for me," I added quietly, "I'm finally free, and I'm not coming back." Their faces crumpled, my mother's mouth opening in protest, Jessica's eyes welling with tears. But I didn't wait to hear what they said next. I turned, walked past them, and never looked back. As I reached the stairs to my apartment, I paused for just a moment, the afternoon breeze ruffling my hair. I whispered, not to them, but to myself, "Sometimes walking away is the loudest thing you'll ever say." And with that, I climbed the stairs, step by step, leaving behind everything that had once broken me, and ahead of me, a life that was finally beautifully mine.
I was 17 when my father dragged my suitcase down the stairs, let it slam against every step, then tossed it onto the driveway like it was full of garbage. I didn't say anything. My voice had already been stripped down to silence over the years. My mother stood at the doorway, arms crossed like a statue sculpted out of resentment. He pointed his finger in my face, so close I could smell the bitterness in his breath. "In a month, you'll be back on your knees." "Parasite." I cried, "Of course I did." Not because I believed him, but because I knew he believed every word. I picked up my suitcase, a cheap one with a broken zipper and a single change of clothes inside, and walked away. No hug, no goodbye, just the sound of the screen door slamming behind me. I didn't look back, because if I had, I might have broken. And I couldn't afford to. No job, no apartment, just a prepaid phone with 3% battery and no charger. I slept on a bench that night, ate a stale bagel the next morning, and spent the rest of the week chasing any kind of work that would take a kid with no address and no references. But I made it through that first month, and the one after, and every one that followed. I survived. I endured. And slowly I built. It's been 9 years since that night. And the girl with the torn suitcase? She doesn't exist anymore. Today, I live in a home I bought in full. I run my own business. My name is featured in magazines and startup lists. I mentor women who were told they'd never become anything. And for the last 9 years, I never heard from them. Not a single text. Not even when I graduated college. Not when I was featured in Business Weekly's Next Power Builders. Not even when I bought the house that sits just 5 miles from theirs. I became invisible until now. Because last Tuesday, my phone started buzzing. Unknown numbers. Back-to-back voicemails. Some from my hometown area code. One from a number I knew by heart, even though I had deleted it long ago. I listened to one message. Camille, it's your mother. Please. We need to talk. We wouldn't be reaching out if it wasn't serious. Please call. I didn't respond, so they tried again. It's urgent. It's about the house. And then, we were sorry. Sorry? After nearly a decade? After leaving your own daughter on the street with nothing but a broken suitcase and a slur echoing in her ears? I stared at my screen, watched the calls come in again, and I smiled. My name is Camille. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because the people who left me in the dirt at 17, they just came crawling back. And this time, I'm the one holding the door. If you had looked at our house from the outside, you'd never guess what it felt like to live inside it. White picket fence. Perfect lawn. A mailbox with gold lettering. People at church used to say things like, "You're so lucky, Camille. Your parents seem so put together." But inside, it was a war zone wrapped in good manners. My father ruled like a general. Every word, every decision, every silence his. My mother floated behind him like a ghost in pearls, smiling when people watched, but cold as marble when the doors shut. They didn't hit me. No. Their weapons were quieter, sharper. They punished me with silence, with disapproval, with withholding love unless I conformed. Straighten your back. Why do you always have to talk so much? Don't be dramatic. Stop drawing, it's a waste of time. Be more like your cousin Jenna. At least she knows how to follow rules. I was a straight-A student, but it was never enough. I remember once coming home with a 98 on a calculus test. Dad glanced at the paper, handed it back without looking at me, and said, "Should have been 100. I stopped showing him my grades after that. I wasn't allowed to decorate my room. No posters. No color. Even birthdays felt transactional. Gifts chosen without thought, like they were checking boxes on a list of things parents were supposed to do. But the control didn't stop at the door. When I was 14, I applied for a local art program. I'd been sketching since I could hold a pencil. It was the only time I felt like I existed. When they found the acceptance letter in my bag, they ripped it up in front of me. "We're not paying for you to chase nonsense. You'll embarrass us." I was grounded for trying. That was love in our house, conditional, earned through obedience, granted only when you were useful. By the time I was 16, I'd stopped dreaming out loud. I just focused on surviving. I got a job at a diner after school and told them it was for character building when really it was so I could stash money in a secret envelope behind my dresser. I told myself, one day I'll leave, and I won't look back. But when that day came, when I stood at the edge of the driveway with that busted suitcase and bruised heart, it still broke me. Because no matter how bad it was, a part of me always hoped they'd love me enough to change. They didn't. They called me a parasite. They said I'd be on my knees in a month. And when I left, they didn't check. Didn't call. Didn't wonder if I was alive. To them, cutting me off wasn't cruelty. It was teaching me a lesson. But here's the twist. I learned it. Just not the one they hoped for. They taught me that silence can be armor. That rejection can be a map. That sometimes the only way to survive is to stop begging for love from people who only speak the language of power. So, I became fluent in my own. And now, years later, they want a conversation? No. They're not ready for the woman they forged in their fire. The first night on the street feels like drowning with your eyes wide open. I had $37 in my pocket and a suitcase that barely closed. My only pair of decent shoes were the ones on my feet, and my only real plan was, don't die. I spent that night in the corner of a 24-hour bus station. I used my hoodie as a pillow. I wrapped my arms around my suitcase like it was a shield. I didn't sleep, not really. Just waited for morning. Waited for something that felt less terrifying than silence. The second night, I met a girl named Danny who worked at a diner. She told me they were short-staffed, and I could try washing dishes. I did. That turned into my first paycheck. The first month passed in a blur of steam burns, stale toast, borrowed jackets, and quarters stacked carefully for cheap coffee and laundry. Every single day, I expected to crack. Every single day, I thought, they were right. I can't do this. But I didn't go back. Not once. Because I knew what waited there wasn't home. It was control. It was shame wrapped in fake forgiveness. It was more of that cold, bitter love they used to keep me small. So I stayed out in the storm and learned to build shelter from scratch. I rented a room from an older woman named Mrs. Lyle. She charged me $100 a month and made soup on Sundays. She didn't ask questions. Didn't judge. Just told me, survival's not pretty, baby, but it's beautiful when you do it. By month 3, I had 2 jobs. By month 6, I had enrolled in night classes using a small community grant. By year 2, I earned a scholarship. I didn't tell anyone. Not a soul. Especially not them. I imagined my mother sipping coffee at the kitchen table, wondering if I was still alive. I imagined my father shaking his head, muttering, "She'll call any day now. Just wait." But the call never came, because each time I wanted to pick up the phone, each time I stood in front of that payphone, quarters in hand, I heard it again. "You'll be back on your knees, parasite." And every time I made the same decision. No. I'll crawl on glass before I crawl back to you. That's what they didn't understand. They thought they broke me by kicking me out. But all they really did was free me. Because once I had nothing, no safety net, no expectations, no hands holding me down, I could finally see what I was capable of. And it wasn't just survival. It was rebirth. Over the next few years, I built my future like it was an act of revenge. Late nights studying. Freelance gigs that turned into steady income. Tutoring kids in math for cash under the table. Eventually, I built a consulting business, slowly then suddenly. By 24, I had contracts, savings, and a studio apartment filled with things I earned. Not a single dime from them. Not a single apology from them. And now, 9 years later, with everything I have, they want a seat at my table? Funny. They didn't think I'd last a month. But I've outlived their predictions by nearly a decade. And now, I'm the one deciding who eats. The first message was short. "Camille, it's your mom. Please call." I stared at it for a while. It had come from a number I didn't recognize, but I knew that tone. That trembling, guilt-laced hush. Like she was rehearsing forgiveness through her teeth. I didn't reply. 2 hours later, another text came in. "We really need to talk. It's serious. Please don't ignore this." Still no mention of what they'd done. "No. We're sorry for throwing you away. No. We regret calling you a parasite." Just urgency, the kind of panic people feel when their safety net is gone, and they realize the one they cut loose was the only thing strong enough to catch them. Then came the voicemail from my dad. His voice sounded rough. Tired. Worn down in a way I'd never heard growing up. "Camille, I know we didn't end on good terms. But this isn't about the past. We just need a little help. Some things happened with the business. We're behind on the house, taxes, then a long pause. We wouldn't be asking if it wasn't serious. Just call me back. I didn't cry. I should have, maybe. But all I felt was this slow, cold wave of realization. They didn't call because they missed me. They called because they needed me. And suddenly, I understood the silence of the last 9 years. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't shame. It was disinterest. I was useless to them until now. So I started digging. I opened a private browser and searched my father's business. And there it was. Bankruptcy filing. IRS lien. 3 lawsuits. A foreclosure notice posted publicly 3 weeks ago. It was all crumbling. The house they kept pristine? On auction listing sites. The business they prioritized over me? Dead. And I had just signed a 6-figure deal with an international client. My team was expanding. I had employees, interns, an office with my name on the wall. 9 years ago, they bet I'd be nothing. Now they were betting on me to save them. I sat with that thought. I let it marinate in silence. Because this wasn't a movie. There was no epic reunion speech. No tearful embrace at a train station. This was real life. And in real life, when people show you what you mean to them, believe them. I thought about replying. Thought about saying, "Sure, I'll help. Let's meet at that same driveway you threw me down." But no. They didn't deserve poetic. They deserved truth. I took my time. Let them sweat through a weekend of radio silence. And then I sent one line, no greeting. No emoji. No punctuation. You said I'd be back on my knees. Turns out I was just getting on my feet. They didn't reply. And that silence? For once, it was mine. I agreed to meet them. Not because I owe them anything. Not because I had questions. But because I wanted to look them in the eye. And not feel small. I picked the place, a quiet cafe in the nicer part of town. The kind of place they wouldn't have expected me to belong in. The kind of place they used to tell me I'd never afford if I kept chasing dreams like a fool. I wore a tailored blazer. Neutral tones. Clean lines. Power. My hair was pulled back. No loud colors, no revenge makeup. Just peace. And presence. They were already there when I arrived. 2 people who once looked like giants in my life, now sunken, aged by time and consequence. My mother wore oversized sunglasses like they could hide how much she'd been crying. My father looked thinner, grayer, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. They stood when I walked in. My father tried to smile. "Camille. Wow, you look." I held up a hand and sat down. Silence followed. The server came and took my order. A matcha latte, oat milk, no sugar. The same drink they used to mock me for when I couldn't afford it. When we were alone again, I leaned back in my chair and said, "Let's not waste time. What do you want?" My mother blinked. "Sweetheart." "Don't," I said calmly. "Don't start with sweetheart. Just speak." My dad cleared his throat. "We lost the business. It wasn't sudden. It's been declining for years. COVID hit us hard. Then some bad investments. We fell behind on taxes, and now the house is going up for auction." He didn't look at me, just stared at his hands. Mom added quickly, "We didn't come here to beg. We just hoped maybe you could help. With a loan. A temporary bridge. We know you're doing well." I sipped my latte and said nothing. After a long pause, I asked, "Do you remember what you said to me when you threw me out?" They froze. "You said I'd be back on my knees in a month. That I was a parasite." My father looked down. My mother whispered, "We were scared. We thought you were making a mistake. We didn't know how to help you, and we handled it badly." "No," I said. "You handled it exactly how you wanted to. You tried to break me." She shook her head, eyes watering. "We made a mistake. You made a choice." They both went quiet again. I leaned forward. "You made me believe I was nothing. And that belief nearly killed me. But it also made me relentless." My voice didn't crack. Not once. "And now you're here, asking for help. Not because you care, but because I have something you want. I stood up, left a 20 on the table. You don't get to meet this version of me. You don't get access to her. She's not for you. My mother opened her mouth to speak, but I was already walking out. And as I stepped into the sunlight, I realized something powerful. They didn't just lose their house. They lost their chance to know the woman they tried to bury. I didn't look back when I left the cafe. Not at the table. Not at them. Not at the years they wasted pretending I was disposable. I walked to my car, a sleek electric coupe I bought cash 2 months ago, and slid into the driver's seat with the kind of quiet confidence you can't fake. They thought I'd come crawling back. But I didn't crawl. I climbed. Step by painful step. The consulting business I started in a cramped studio apartment was now housed in a 2-story corner office with a skyline view. I had 15 employees, 2 assistants, 4 clients on a wait list, a growing investment portfolio, an apartment in Lisbon I used for creative retreats, and a life that was finally fully mine. No more begging. No more explaining. No more apologizing for shining too brightly in a house that kept its windows closed. While they were gossiping at church, I was networking at conferences. While they were controlling every inch of their crumbling empire, I was building something with open doors and honest work. And the best part? I made sure no other girl had to start the way I did. I launched a mentorship program for young women aging out of foster care. I funded college application scholarships. I held financial literacy workshops in the exact neighborhood they told me to stay away from because it was beneath us. Turns out that neighborhood raised me more than they ever did. One afternoon, my assistant burst into my office. "Camille, check this out." She handed me her iPad. On it, a video clip. Local news. My old family home in the background. Foreclosure auction signs in the yard. My father stood on the porch, shouting at a cameraman to leave the property. My mother? Off screen, her voice trembling as she said, "This is private. We don't want to talk about our daughter. She has nothing to do with this." But everyone knew. They'd Googled me. They saw my name in headlines. They knew exactly what they threw away. The internet doesn't forget. The comments were brutal. "You kicked her out and now you're broke?" "Karma's wild. I'd ask her to buy the house and turn it into a shelter. Bet she has more class than all of y'all put together." I didn't share the clip. I didn't need to, because the real revenge was that they had to watch me live, loudly, joyfully, unapologetically, in a world that welcomed me after they slammed the door in my face. I didn't pay their bills, but I did buy something else. 3 weeks later, I closed on a multi-unit property in that same neighborhood, just 5 miles from the house they lost. It wasn't flashy, just a solid building, good bones, good community. I converted the top floor into free housing for displaced women. The unit below it? An art studio. Open to any young girl who wanted to sketch the kind of future she was once told she couldn't have. I didn't put my name on the building. I didn't do press. I didn't need credit. I just needed to give someone else the thing I never had. A soft landing. It happened on a Monday. I was in my office, reviewing design drafts for the shelter expansion, when reception buzzed me. "Camille, there's a woman down here. Says she's your mother." My heart didn't skip. It didn't crack. It just went still. I stood up slowly, walked to the window, and looked down. There she was. Same stiff posture. Same beige trench coat she wore when she dropped me off at church socials. Same eyes, but now swollen, tired, lost. She looked like someone who had finally run out of people to lie to. I stayed at the window. "Tell her I'm in a meeting," I said into the intercom. "But she says it's urgent." "She said that 9 years ago too," I replied. Didn't mean much then either. I turned away. Let the blinds fall. 10 minutes later, my assistant walked into my office, looking uncomfortable. "She's still downstairs," she said gently. "Won't leave." Of course she wouldn't. I gave it 5 more minutes. Then I wrote a note, placed it in an envelope, and handed it to my assistant. "Please give her this." She returned 20 minutes later. She cried when she read it, then left, quietly. I didn't ask what she looked like. I already knew. because the note said everything I needed it to my mother. 9 years ago, you told me I'd be back on my knees. Instead, I got on my feet. You didn't check if I survived. You didn't call. You didn't love me. You left me. And now you want to return, not for me, but for shelter. But you don't get to step into the house I built when you left me out in the cold. This version of me, she's not for you. Return to sender. Camille. I didn't expect her to understand. Because people like her, they think love is just another transaction. Something you can cash in when things go south. But love isn't debt. And I didn't know her healing. Later that night, I stood in the garden behind my building, barefoot in the dirt, watching the wind dance between the wildflowers I'd planted. One of the girls from the shelter came out, shy, maybe 17, the same age I was when I got thrown away. She held a sketchbook in her hand. "Miss Camille," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." She hesitated. "Were you ever where I am now?" I smiled. I was. Once. And what happened? I looked at her, young, bruised by life, but still standing. And I said, I stopped knocking on the doors that wouldn't open. Then I built my own house. And I filled it with people who never asked me to shrink. She blinked, then smiled back. She didn't need more. Because some stories don't need to be told in full. Just understood. Sometimes I still dream about that suitcase. The one they threw down the stairs. The one with the broken zipper and nothing but clothes that didn't fit and a heart that hadn't hardened yet. In the dream, I'm holding it again. But this time, I don't feel fear. I feel gratitude. Because that suitcase didn't carry my ruin, it carried my beginning. It's been almost 10 years since they threw me out with that final insult echoing behind me. You'll be back on your knees, parasite. And they were right about one thing. I was on my knees. But not in front of them. I was on my knees in the back room of a diner scrubbing burnt cheese off trays. On my knees praying I could stretch $20 across 7 days. On my knees searching library computers for scholarships, jobs, hope. They thought that meant they had won. But what they didn't understand was this. Sometimes the ground is where you plant. And I planted everything. I planted pain. And it became purpose. I planted silence. And it became strength. I planted rejection. And it became resilience. Today, I walk through the halls of a shelter I funded, the one that houses girls who are called too much, too loud, too weak, or too broken. There's a wall in the entryway. On it, painted in soft gold letters, is a quote from one of my journals. What they threw away grew wild and beautiful where they couldn't reach. People always ask me why I don't use my last name anymore. It's simple. That name never protected me. It erased me. So I gave it back. And took only what I earned. My future. My identity. My peace. A few weeks ago, I passed by my parents' old house. It was boarded up. Grass overgrown. Paint peeling. Empty. The kingdom they sacrificed their daughter to protect was nothing but hollow wood now. I didn't stop. Didn't cry. Didn't even blink. I just whispered thank you to the version of me who survived long enough to become someone they couldn't predict. And as I walked away, I remembered something I'd once written down on a napkin during my lowest point. They called me a parasite, but parasites only feed. I bled, broke, built, and bloomed. In the final scene of this life, the real life, not the one they imagined, I'm not on my knees. I'm at the front of a room full of girls, teaching them how to sign their first lease. I'm standing in front of crowds at conferences, telling the truth. That healing doesn't always come with apologies. That sometimes the closure is you deciding the story ends on your terms. And most of all, that the family you're born into may bury you. But you're not a corpse. You're a seed. They threw me out thinking I'd wither. But I became the storm that watered my own roots. And now, everything I grow grows beyond them.